Betty Smith. How you doing?
Hey, hey, hey. She ready.
Where are you going? Thank you so much for joining me
Do
tonight.
or die, Bed-Stuy. Well, they don't want you to say do or die. Bed-Stuy is beautiful. Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Yeah.
I'm in Bed-Stuy too right now. I'm right off
Oh,
Fulton
that's
Street.
wonderful. That's right. I grew up on 9 Verona Place. You can go past it tomorrow when you walk your dog or cat or just yourself. And 9 Verona Place between Macon and Fulton.
Okay, yeah. I'm right off.
Yeah.
Do you know the Fulton Street McDonald's, like the
Yes.
iconic Fulton Street? I'm right next to
Yes.
that.
Oh, that's great. I used to get my hair braided over there all the time.
It's sort of great, but living that
Yeah.
close to a McDonald's can be a problem sometimes.
Oh, well, you don't look like you have anything to any fat to pinch.
Now wait, you've been in Bed-Stuy since forever, right?
Well, I grew up in Bed-Stuy, and then, pursuing my dreams, I went to California for 7 years, and then I came back home. My father passed, and I came to bury him, and I stayed for a minute. That's why I'm here.
Now tell me about your parents when you were young. What did they do? I know your father was a choir director, right?
My father, you're absolutely correct. My father grew me up in church. He was a choir director, and my mother was a school teacher and a housewife. And between them, I learned. I was like a cup of hot steaming water in Bed-Stuy, and all of the choral singing. It just was like the tea bag, and I just immersed the tea bag into my hot water me, and it came out that I became very interested in singing gospel music and soul music.
Yeah. Now, are you a first generation American? Were your parents they were from
My
Trinidad
parents were
originally?
immigrants. My parents were immigrants from my ancestry is from Ghana, but my parents were from Trinidad, and then we moved up here, and my mother had 4 of us.
Gotcha. How did that work culturally? Is your parents, were they very much more traditional in how they were when from Trinidad, or they assimilate more to American culture? Was it kind of a thing of like, no, you're going to do it how we would have done it traditionally, that kind of thing?
Well, my mother was a proponent of you're going to do it the way we did it in the islands. My father, fortunately, was a proponent of let's jump right knee deep into the melting pot. And so I got a good balance, 50-50. So I didn't forget my roots. I don't forget where I can't come from, but then I know where I'm going to. I know the community in America, in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah. So was that your original experience with music? Was that probably the church?
It was the church, absolutely. Yes.
What were the big gospel artists at the time? I know you've talked about before that your parents really didn't like you listening to non-Christian music.
Yes.
But what were those big gospel artists that were
Well,
an
we
original
were listening
inspiration?
all the time. We were listening to we had, believe it or not, we had Mahalia Jackson on the stereo. We had Reverend James Cleveland on the stereo, and even Elvis Presley did a religious themed album. Something about In the Chapel. They saw me crying in the chapel. I think the name of it was In the Chapel. You can Google it. And he has some beautiful songs. Turns out, these years later, I checked out his album on YouTube, and I noticed that those were the songs they were teaching little old me. So it was very beautiful.
And now, how many siblings do you have? I know about your older brother, Louis. Did you have any other brothers or sisters?
Yes, I'm the youngest of 4.
Oh yeah. Sorry, you said before. So besides Louis, what about your other siblings? Were they also into music? Because I know he ended up being a big inspiration for you. What about the other 3, other 2?
Yeah. Louis was a very big inspiration. He's the one who actually got me past my inhibitions and told me to go for it on his deathbed. It so happened that I was singing to him to comfort. I went to visit him in the hospital several times, and he was going. We could tell he was going away, and so it was very sad for me. But I kept singing because I wanted to cheer him up, even though inside I was crying. And he said, "You know what? You should definitely go for broke and just pursue your music. I know you're working on Wall Street as a receptionist, but you need to take that step in faith." And I did, and it worked out.
So before that point, I know you like you said you worked on Wall Street, and I think, did you end up going to the New School for college?
I went to New School. I got a degree with a in social work, and not social work. I got a degree in liberal arts and creative music therapy.
So was that the
Creative
school of, was that
therapy.
Lang?
That's that's Lang, yes.
The reason I know is I went to the jazz school. I'm
Oh, the jazz
20.
school.
Yeah, I
Oh,
graduated
we
in like
couldn't.
2021 or something.
Oh no, we couldn't. The jazz school students, they didn't talk to the rest of us.
There's kind of
They
a
were too good. That shit didn't stink. They were wonderful. My friend Jasmine Horn also, she took some classes in creative arts therapy, so we got to know each other and we had a really good time. She's very famous now. Her dreams are coming true, and she has I think she's at gonna be at the Milan Blue Note. I'm gonna be there this fall, so maybe I'll bump into her. But
so
she's a fellow alumni like you and me.
yes, ma'am.
See how small the world is? Small world.
Very small world. Same neighborhood, same school,
Wow, Scotty.
same
This was meant
McDonald's.
we were meant to be, man.
So leading up to going to the new school, why did you get that degree? What were kind of the moments that happened that led you to going that route?
To go to new school was for me to finish my education. I had promised my mother that I was going to finish my education, but after I got out of high school, I didn't go straight to college. I went into the market to make money because I needed money for my voice lessons and whatnot.
So that whole time, singing was the goal, even though you were doing other things. That was the
It was
goal.
subconscious. It was more subconscious at that point,
Hmm.
but it was the goal because it was who I am. I was trying to suppress it, being in the business, um, going down on Wall Street and doing the administration and the assistant and legal secretary and that type of receptionist thing. But I got to pay the rent, but I also had to fulfill my inner child's desire to sing.
Were there any other things that you were interested in besides singing that you're like, you know what, maybe this could be my career. This is my other
No,
passion.
not really. I really knew I wanted to sing. I just had to give myself permission to go for it.
What, do you mean permission in the sense of like to take such a big risk, or does it just seem unreasonable? Is that why?
It's a big risk. It's a big risk. And I know a lot of artists and creatives know that at some point you got to jump off the bridge. You got to just jump
Hmm.
and hopefully you'll land in a position, a straight diving position, and you'll go into the underbelly and you'll come out and you'll survive. But it's a very challenging, yet beautiful music. The prize is music, so it's worth it.
So while you were working and making, obviously paying the bills, were you
Yeah.
just gigging randomly? Did you have any type of career trajectory in terms of singing? I know you said it's subconscious, but were you taking gigs where you could get them, or was it really more of a personal thing at that point?
I was working on Wall Street, like I said, and I was doing some gigs. I was taking my voice. I was taking my voice lessons, and I was trying to audition here and there, but it was something that I had to continue doing while I stayed in New York. New York's expensive, brother.
Yes, ma'am.
So I had to stay above the water because my parents did not want me to be doing the music thing. They wanted me to be doing the business thing. So I had to be very, very careful that I didn't upset them in
Now,
that respect.
do you think they would have been more okay with it if, because your father being a choir director, do you think if you said I want to go into music as a teacher, maybe they would have been more understanding in that sense?
I don't know. It was, first of all, my father was like, music was his world and he let us in it, but he didn't want any competition coming from home. He
There's
did
enough
not.
competition in the world. He doesn't
He
need any
wanted us
more.
to be loving groupies. I mean, I'm just gonna keep it real because that's what was happening. That was what was happening. So he wanted me to be a professional.
Hmm. And
And on church Sundays, he wanted me to be into the religious music. Absolutely, a lot of families that grew up in church and Black folk could tell you it was absolutely not acceptable to pursue a secular career in music.
so what was the point where you were able to explain to them, this is what I'm going for? I know that your father passed away close to your
There was
brother,
no
and that was
point.
kind of the initiation, so I'm not
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, there was no point. The closest thing I got to it, which is why I always thank my brother in heaven, is that he gave me he's like, I'm your oldest brother, and I could see in your soul you're supposed to be singing, nothing else. Go and do it. And then he died. So my parents had died before him. So I never sat down and had that conversation because basically it'll probably would have gotten me nowhere fast.
So there's probably would you say that's the most important moment in your life was your brother telling you that?
It was pretty intense. Yeah. It
Mhm.
was very intense. Yes.
And when you
It
two
was
were
the most
younger,
important moment.
I know you've mentioned that since your parents were pretty strict about not having non-religious music in the house, that you two used to
Yes.
sneak out and go to the Apollo. Is that right?
Yeah, that was so much fun. He gave me that gift. Yeah, several times. Yeah.
When you say sneak out, do you mean like, oh, mom's out, dad's out, let's go, or like
That kind of
going out
thing.
the
Yeah,
like
exactly.
literally like taking shoes off and
No,
sneaking through the
no, no,
door?
no. Not that intense, but we would go out, he'll tell them that he's taking me to the Central Park or something, and we for hang out in the park and roller skate, whatever, So that was that. But we had a good time, and I got that exposure. And once I saw them, I never went back. I always had that dream that I wanted to sing soul music.
Of all those artists that you were able to see, do you remember, like, are we talking you went out 4 or 5 times, 10, 20 times? How many
Nah,
would you
nah,
say?
nah. 4 or 5 times caps.
So of those people that you saw, is there one performance that really, like, when you think of those times sneaking out, that really sticks with you?
Yeah, Goddess Night and the Pips. She was a real inspiration to me at the
Oh,
time. Yeah.
that must
She
have been
saw
an
me.
amazing
I
show.
bumped into her at the Waldorf Astoria in Midtown New York, and she gave me like $100. I was still very young. I was like maybe 7, and I had on a beautiful blue satin coming a gown, and my church had, they called them socials, but it was like a dinner, and they rented a hotel, and we had a nice conference room dinner, and we'd all get all dolled up and everything. So everything was nice. And then as I was going in, she was finishing a gig that she was doing at the Waldorf Astoria. So that was pretty intense. Or maybe she was staying at the Waldorf Astoria on her way out to maybe wherever she was doing her gig, probably the Apollo.
And you tell her I saw you when I was a kid back in the Apollo?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. If I get ever see her again. But that's a precious memory.
So
We
after
vibed very, very well.
absolutely. After you have that conversation with your brother, skipping ahead again, what was the initial thought process? Was it like, I'm dropping everything right now, I'm taking my savings and I'm going for it? How did you plan your career out from that point?
Well, what I did was I intensified my voice lessons. Like I would take them once in a while. Then I started taking them 4 or 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
I set up a payment plan because I really couldn't afford it at the time. But I set up a payment plan with my Italian vocal coach and Filippo Di Stefano, and he taught me. He trained my voice and he polished it, and he told me different artists to listen to different artists, because as a creative, you get into your own, you just get into your own lane. But sometimes as you're learning to sing, you need to say, okay, what does Prince sound like? How does he say E? How does Michael Jackson scream? How does Whitney Houston hit a high note? You have to start analyzing and decomposing everything. You got to figure out what is it. Why does Sinead O'Connor make me cry? Because she emotes,
Mm-hmm.
right? She just doesn't sing though. Why does Mick Jagger never looks at? He never he learns everything. I met Mick when I was volunteering down in the Caribbean a couple of years ago at he has a charity that gets school children in the Caribbean clothes and school books and stuff. And I had an opportunity to meet him, and we vibed very well. And he took a picture with me. I have it on for those people who want to see it. It's on my Bette Smith Music at Instagram. So uh the thing I'm saying is that he has a very good routine. He told me he jogs every day. He stays in shape. He takes care of his body. It's number one, and he takes a lot of dance classes. And he's very open. Like if you send him stuff, he listens to it. He's open minded, and that's how I am now that I'm singing. I have a lot of people that I take under my wing. Not a lot, maybe just one at the time, because I mean you can't do but so much in 24 hours a day. But I take one of my fans and I take her on tour with me, and I'm teaching her to get the ropes on stage because she's a guitarist and her name is
Hmm.
Tabitha. And stuff like that. You learn from other creatives, you learn from other artists. You find somebody that you like. And if you listen to your favorite singer, you're like, oh, he was listening to, um, Fresh, Fresh Prince, or different rappers. Oh, that guy was he was listening to Jay-Z.
Hmm.
You kind of hear people's voices in people's voices if
Hmm.
you listen hard enough.
And then when did you start getting ready to produce? I guess it would be your second album, right? Because introducing it was Betty Sty or Bet Sty at the time.
Yes,
By the way,
that's
I've
that.
heard both pronounced. I've heard you and other people call you Betty Smith, Bet Smith. Which one is? What do you prefer?
Betty.
Betty?
Betty's easy. Rolls off Betty, rolls off the tongue,
Because
you know.
I've heard of people say a few different ways, and I was like, I'm gonna take a shot
Best
at one and
guy.
just hope for the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah, you did right. You did good.
But when you were Bet Sty at the time, and then you come
Yeah,
up
because my
with
neighborhood, I
yeah.
was privileged. I was kind of given honor to my roots, Bed-Stuy. So I said Betty Smith, Bed-Stuy, that kind of thing.
And then that first, or like I said, second album, because the first one was back in '06. Then you come
Back
up
in
with
the
this
day.
second one 9 years later, which is This
Yes,
Is Neo
yes.
Blues. When
This
did you
is
get?
new.
When did that start? How did it go from I'm doing as many lessons a week, and now it's time to fully do it and make another album?
When I just went from that to that by just staying focused,
Hmm.
I just stayed focused. It took me some time, you know, um, it takes a lot of money to do demo tapes. Back in the day, it wasn't like you got your home station all together and you just do it. You had to go find people to collaborate, people to write songs with. And it was a process, a good, a sweet process, but a process going down to the village, finding other artists, jamming. Those things take time. You don't just get on stage and boom, you have it all together. It's
So
really an interesting process.
were you just walking into venues on jam nights and just anyone you
That's
liked,
what
that kind of thing?
I was walking into venues, the Red Lion, all these type of places down in the village, on the West Village to be specific.
Yeah.
And you'd go to the back, you sign up, and they'd let you sing. And that's amazing. Any artist thinking about singing, I still go and jam
It's an
when I
amazing
get
area.
a chance. Yes.
Did you ever
You
go right next to Red Lion? Did you ever go to the Monday night jams at the bitter end?
The bitter end. I played there. Yeah, those are fun.
We used to. That was my first introduction.
Intense.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
They're
yeah.
kind of intimidating. I used to stay away from the bitter end, but then I got over my butterflies in my stomach and I went on stage. It wasn't that bad.
No, it's
It
great.
was fun.
It's an intimidating place, and the people that work there are
Do you
intimidating.
agree?
Would be
Do
the
you
way
agree?
to say I'll
They're
say
real nice. I don't. I want to give them some good press. They were real. They're very nice. That challenge of making us feel a little intimidating, us young artists, and we felt a little bit hard to get on stage there. But once you get on stage, it's really cool.
yeah. I had such an amazing time there. That was my first time really playing with New York musicians that were because like musicians at college in New York are one thing, but then going out and actually seeing real New York musicians is a whole nother thing. And my
It is.
friend he knew the guy who runs it, Richie Canada.
Oh
And I
yes.
remember when I got there, I was just like, oh, this is my first year of college. I was like, this is a whole different league because I'm a drummer.
Oh, you are a
I
drummer.
was like, this is a
Awesome. Love
whole
drummers.
different league of people. And I remember I was sweating. But then I got up there and Richie when he looked at me and he just told me to hit harder, and then that calmed me down. That was like the one thing, and I remember that distinctly.
See that little gem right there made you who you are in the drumming,
Hmm.
sense,
And every time I
right?
play drums now, if I'm not hitting the snare loud enough, I can picture, which is probably a problem because I tend to hit a little bit too hard. But hey,
Never too hard when those drums are great. I love drums. They're my favorite. I stand in front of the drummer. I'm not supposed to. It just gives me that extra oomph that I need to perform with integrity and power.
I'm biased, but I think that the drummer is they single-handedly can make an amazing band sound terrible or a terrible band sound really good. That,
Yes,
but
I
again,
agree
I'm
with you.
biased.
No, but you're absolutely. I like to think, uh, adding on to what you're saying, I like to think of the drum as the heartbeat of the band.
Yeah.
You feel me?
Mm-hmm. And if it's not consistent, then well, you're fired, and you're not going to be jamming at the bitter end. So, how long did it take to get meeting all those people to get a band together to produce that record?
Well, I put an ad out and then I did a audition, but I was lucky. I went down to Club 101. There's a Starbucks there, it's on McDougal and
Mm-hmm.
7th, somewhere around there. And I got a gig every Monday night, every Tuesday night rather, at the 101 Club, Club 101. So that, and plus the auditioning and getting this band together, it was a process. It took me like maybe 6 months to really get a band that I felt really represented me.
Then how did you make that change going from that album to the next one? Going, you got rid of the Bette thing, became Betty Smith. What was that decision?
Just the kind of producers, Jimbo Mathis was such an impact in my career because I was doing some street fairs. I did this particular one called the Fifth Avenue Fair, and I remember really rocking hard, rocking out. And the band that was playing, actually, they were playing kitty corner from me. So when they finished their set, they came over and listened to me. One guy was moonlighting as a drummer, but he's really a lawyer, or you could say the vice versa, but whatever. He told me to hook up, try to connect with Jimbo Mathis. He gave me his email. I kept emailing him. It took about 2, 3 months, which is a shout out to the creatives out there. Don't give up. Don't give up. Never give up. Um, so I kept emailing him and they're like, nah, he's not gonna answer you. He don't have time for you. But I kept emailing him. And one day he answered me. He said, listen, I'm coming to New York to see you. And we had like a Starbucks coffee. And he said, I wrote this song and I want to collaborate with you called Dirty Hustlin'. And I said, great, I'm excited. I was so jazzed. And he said, you know, only one condition. I was like, oh, here it comes. He said, no, you got to come down to Mississippi. We have a studio there in the back of a church, and I got the right band. They are going to love you, and you're going to love them, but you got to be willing to come down. So I took the leap. I took the jump, and God did it. He made everything work out. I was down there for like a week, and we just made the whole album. And then after I left, I came home. I was crying because I was like, I thought maybe he would tell me some news about he was trying to get me a record deal. He was working on it. And he said, he called me up like 3 weeks later and told me, I got you a deal on Fat Poss and Big Legal Mess Records. So that was like a real blessing for me.
Now, were you still working on Wall Street at the time, or at that point were you fully off and just making money from music?
Just part-timing, always part-timing.
What was the point?
Campaign,
What was the point
campaign.
where you were able to quit, and now your full career was music?
It happened, you know, like I said, man, it's really, expensive living in New York. So I always have something going on in the side.
Mm-hmm.
Always do. I always have a little bit of something going on where I can make a little dent. But when I really started doing it full time, to answer your question, was around right before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And did you
Yeah.
have a manager at that time, a publicist, all
Yeah.
that? When did that all start coming together?
That just came naturally. People saw me singing, and I met a gentleman named Danny Lerner, and he he was an artist, but he was a filmmaker. He was an artist in his own right, and he had just finished wrapping up his 35 millimeter film called Big Apple that he came from Minnesota to New York to create, follow his dreams. And he needed some music for his soundtrack, like a lot of directors and filmmakers do. So he heard about me. I guess he came to Club 101 or something, but he saw that he liked my music and he put my music on his movie called Big Apple.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that's how. And then as he transitioned, took a break from filmmaking, he started managing me.
And now at that point, were you thinking like, man, I took this risk. Now I got a manager. I got all this, or was it just kind of part of the course? You weren't thinking about it too much.
This was the album that I made with Jimbo
Hmm.
Mathis, just to connect those dots. It was called Jet Lagger.
Yes.
This is the album. This was the first album that I made in Mississippi. Hopefully, I'll be making more. I'm sorry. What was your question again, Scotty?
I was asking, like, you're you're making these records, you're getting a manager, you're on a label at this point. Were you thinking like, man, I took this risk, and just was it hitting you that now I'm making it, or at that point was it just kind of all coming and you're just going, you're not really thinking about it too much?
You don't think about it too much because if you start setting up all those benchmarks, it's going to drive you crazy. So I go with the flow. Like, I was in Europe and, you just pinch yourself. You're like, here I am. This is when I was 4 years old. This is where I wanted to be. And here I am singing at a club in Paris or at a festival in Spain. So you have to constantly, I always open my arms like this and people say, wow, she's got a big head. I'm opening my arms to process, to take it in because it's hard for me to take it in.
Hmm.
Some people are natural showmen and some people are introverts that push themselves to be showmen. I'm an introvert who wants to be an extrovert. So I have to let myself let that tea bag steep in my water. I have to
Uh-huh.
allow it to happen because it's a dream come true.
Hmm.
It's a dream coming true.
Then jumping ahead a couple years, how did you meet Jimmy Hogarth and start working with him?
Well, I had a good co-manager was his name is Ed Lewis, and he has a really good management company in the UK. He connected me with Jimmy Hogarth. He gave my music to Jimmy Hogarth. Jimmy loved my music that I made with Jimbo, and he said I want to take it to the next level. And we flew out to he lives in London. He's a Scottish gentleman, but he lives in London. I flew out to his beautiful studio, all parquet wood floors and decked out. And we started writing from the jump. We just started writing and we came up with 13 songs. Now, I only wrote 5 of those songs,
Hmm.
but the other songs, I told him I wanted to collaborate. So I have at least 10 other artists on that album with me.
Yes. And then so that ended up being
Good
yeah,
thing,
good
good
good bad
thing,
and Betty
good thing.
from 2020. Oh, good thing. Sorry.
No, no, no. I'm describing good thing. Good
Gotcha,
thing.
gotcha.
Yeah. We jumped over the second, the good, the bad, and the Betty.
Yeah,
That
I couldn't remember if
that
he had
happened during the
written.
pandemic.
Gotcha. That's I
This
wasn't
this
sure.
album, I finished rapping this album and went back down to Mississippi and I recorded it with Jimbo's bass player and drummer, Bronson too, and Matt Patton. Matt Patton is the bass player for the Drive By Truckers. They're a band from North Carolina, and now he lives in Oregon. But the moral of the story is I went back down. I finished this one, and then I went back down and did this one. This one's called The Good, the Bad, and the Betty. So that's chronologically how it went.
I couldn't remember
Then
if Jimmy had
then I
if
released Good Thing.
yeah, I couldn't remember if Jimmy had written on the good and the bad and good, the bad, and the Betty or not. Did he write on that at
No,
all?
he didn't. He didn't write, but he did. He was such a gentleman. He went in and he did all kinds of overdubs and helped polish it up.
Hmm.
Guitar overdubs.
So then, when you were writing with him for Good Thing, because I mean that's the album just came out. I think
Yeah,
less than 2 weeks ago.
that's
Um,
right. And we're talking Jimmy. This is Jimbo Mathis.
mhm.
His name is Jimmy too, so it's
Yes, of
confusing.
course. Yeah, no, Jimbo
Jim,
worked on
Jimmy
the others, and then
Mathis helped me with these two, and Jimmy Hogarth helped me with the Good Thing.
mhm.
That's why the Good Thing. This is Jimmy Hogarth's work.
So how many times did you go out to the UK to work with him? Was
I
that
just went once.
and
I
you
went once.
wrote it and recorded everything in that one shot?
Yeah, it was very intense. We locked ourselves into the studio for 7 hours, came out, had some carrot juice, some salad, some turkey, and came back in. It was like I couldn't believe it. It was very intense.
So was it basically, did you just have a
It was
band in the
so
studio with
intense.
you and you're just writing, try this, record it,
No,
writing, try this?
no, Jimmy is a drummer. He's a guitarist. That's his first instrument. But he played the drums. He did a lot on this album.
Hmm.
What he did was we sang. He had some of the tracks pre-prepared because he knew I was coming.
Yeah, yeah.
Some of the tracks pre-prepared because remember I told you this was a collaboration with other artists. So he
Hmm.
had done all the pre-production. I just had to sing on it. That's how that went down. Whereby when I did this was a live band in the studio down south. So it's different
Gotcha.
feet. Yeah.
So how many days was it that you were recording your vocals for that?
About 7 days, and then a lot of overdubs. I did most of the background vocals. It was a process.
How'd you
It
make
took
sure
a minute.
when you're recording that long every day for a week straight, how do you make sure that you're not just absolutely killing your voice?
Oh, because I wouldn't, being that I told you we did a lot of voice lessons, I learned how not to overstress my voice. When you yell, you don't yell, you yell, yell internally. There's just little techniques that you learn taking voice lessons that you will be able. That's the reason for voice lessons. It's not to sing. It's the reason for voice lessons, in my opinion, is to protect yourself from getting vocal notes. Because when you get the vocal notes, your voice is over. Your career is over.
Mm-hmm. And then so when you're recording that record, are there any points in the album where you're thinking like you can kind of use, like, I know you said you're using this technique to get through it, but like, how you ever hear the story about Michael Jackson singing Earth Song, and how it's my favorite song in the whole world. That was recorded like at the end of the night.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just a certain timbre to his voice that just, it absolutely killed it. And you can hear it in his voice because he had been singing all the other songs all day. Obviously, you're using this good technique, but is there any amount of, can you use a little bit of fatigue to your advantage sometimes, or is that the dangerous thing to do?
That's a good question. That's a good question. You can hear it if you listen to Lived and Died 1,000 Times. You can hear my voice has a little more edge to it, because it was that kind of situation going down in the studio. Yes.
And are there times where you're going back and you're hearing that edge and you're thinking, oh, this is perfect for this song, but maybe I want to come back on a fresh day and do it for this one?
Sometimes, absolutely. Yeah. It's like cooking, you add a little bit of salt. No, it needs a little bit more pepper. Maybe need some cinnamon,
Now I'm hungry, Betty.
You got all those stores and those Jamaican patty stores in Bed-Stuy.
Yep.
And then you got the Starbucks.
You got a lot
of choices.
Is there any good Trinidadian food around here? Because I've never had any type of Trinidad food.
They have some on Fulton Street. Coming back, you got to leave McDonald's alone and be a little bit more investigative.
I hover around McDonald's and Kennedy Chicken, which used to be Crown
Kennedy
Chicken.
Fried. That's my favorite after gig, late night gig.
Oh,
Kennedy Fried. They have a branch in Harlem. Oh my God. Really good. The biscuits are great, but then I got to hit the gym.
Yes. See, I work late as a DJ. That's actually
Oh, you do?
That's my main job, technically.
That's your main squeeze. Okay.
And so when I get back, on certain nights, it's like 1 a.m, and then certain nights it's 3 or 4 a.m, and Kennedy's the one spot that has those big, the bright ass lights. It's like you're walking by the gates of heaven. Well,
I'm standing on the corner with these bright lights. Nobody's gonna mug me.
I know. I'm in there and I can't read the menu because I'm like,
you can't see, blinded by the light.
Well, Betty, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Before I let you go, anything besides the record, anything you want to promote, anything you want to tell the audience?
Just stay safe, and I'll see you next time.
Amazing. Betty, would you mind sticking around for 1 second after I say goodbye?
I will.
Awesome.
I will stick around for you, Scotty.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I don't know when we'll be live again, but, follow the socials. I'll let you all know. Thank you very much.